starting point. If it doesn't survive, it's
well, that's what.
It
But
doesn't
if
matter.
anything moving forward from that point on, if it like say it doesn't, it goes on for the next 4 years, but after that it just falls under. Anything you've mined up in that till that point is.
Oh, sure. No, but I mean, for the people who already had Bitcoins, there's no risk. They just have an additional, the same number of coins in a different currency.
It's only a risk if you buy
some.
new ones.
Yeah, exactly.
And
but for
be
everyone who already had some, it's like, hey, you have $1,000. Here, we give you 1,000 marks. Now, what happens from there on with the marks and the dollar is anyone's guess.
I don't give investing advice, nor do I want to rule on whether a Bitcoin is an investment or a security or anything else. But my instinct right now would be if I held a bunch of Bitcoins, I would sell my Bitcoin Cash tokens while they're worth something.
Exactly. That's the super.
I could also be way
thing
wrong
to do,
there. I don't know.
Yeah, you might. But the thing is, in that configuration, worst things that happens is you miss out on a bigger cash out later.
Right.
You're not losing money. You're just, you had a certain amount of Bitcoins, and now you have that amount of Bitcoin plus, however many $300.
Now that's not true if you keep your Bitcoin in an online exchange. The online exchanges are each setting their own policy about whether they'll convert your wallet to Bitcoin Cash or not. Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Yeah, I've been getting emails from all the places. I have little chunks of Bitcoin at various exchanges, and I don't even really pay much attention to it. But I have definitely been getting emails from all of them with very, very long-winded explanations of what's going on. I'm like, I just hope you guys are doing
well.
the right
Yeah,
thing.
and even if you keep Bitcoin in your own wallet, you have to do a little bit of something to convert it to Bitcoin Cash wallet.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily labor intensive or anything, but it
if
doesn't
you
automatically happen.
If you keep it on an exchange, then don't they get the Bitcoin Cash equivalent to your Bitcoin because it's created as well, right?
No, I mean, some of them are just saying we're not going to bother creating wallets on Bitcoin Cash.
Oh, okay.
They're just like it's
So
too much, it's too expensive. Yeah.
The expectation from the consensus is that Bitcoin Cash is not going to be worth the trouble.
I don't know if that's the consensus. I would not use the word consensus. There are certainly some large exchanges who feel that way. Does not seem to be consensus about any of this, which is why we have this situation, essentially.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Shall we get going, you guys?
Let's do it. And by the way, am I kind of video invisible as a result of the bandwidth issue, just so I know?
No, you're looking good, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Here we go.
Indeed.
Daily Tech News Show is powered by you. Thank you. It's actually the day we get your donations from Patreon. Find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, August 1st, 2017. I'm Tom Merritt. Very excited to welcome back Patrick Beja from FrenchSpin.com from his well-deserved European vacation.
So a couple of people sent me messages saying, what's happening? Why are you not on Daily Tech News Show? What are you gone? And so here's what happened. We were up on the anniversary renegotiation, basically the yearly doubling of my salary, and Tom was being difficult. So and then what I did, strike for a few weeks.
He's French.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's agreed to double my salary again, as we do every year.
Right. I took all the Bitcoin that I was paying you, and now I'll pay you the equivalent amount of Bitcoin Cash as well.
I'm going to make a fortune out of this, I tell you.
Also joining us, a very auspicious day for Rob Reid, author of the book After On, which, Rob, congratulations, it's out today.
Thank you. It now exists. It does indeed. After 7,500 hours of writing and editing, it is really cool that the thing has taken physical form.
We are going to talk a little bit more about that later on in the show, but let's start off with a few tech things you should know. Google announced on Google Plus that the Daydream Ready update is rolling out now to Samsung Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus handsets. Daydream VR app is available from the Google Play Store, and it should work on the S8 phones now, though some users have reported you need to clear the Google VR services data to make it work.
TechCrunch reports retailers confirmed the Nintendo SNES Classic will be available for pre-order in late August. The retro console will ship September 29th for $79.
So those Walmart pre-orders, yeah, that wasn't supposed to happen. Microsoft is partnering with Tobii to add eye control to Windows 10. That's an accessibility feature, and it will be available right now in the Windows Insider preview, although no word when it would actually show up in Windows 10. They're just testing it out. Now here are some more top stories. Microsoft also launched Surface Plus Tuesday. It's not a device, it's a plan. The program spreads payments for Surface devices across 2 years at 0% APR. So you're just paying off your device. You don't have to pay for it all at once. It jumps to 19.99% if you don't make it in 2 years, if you miss some payments. So you do incur some financing at the end. They're partnering with another company that's providing the financing and all of that. Surface Plus customers would get service and support at Microsoft retail stores and the option to upgrade to a newer device 18 months into the payments. And then, of course, you begin a new 2-year period, but it's still 0% financing. A business plan is also available. Businesses get a few more options, multiple devices, different terms. You can have an 18, 24, or 30-month period on your devices, but you still get upgrades and you still get service and support. Rob, I'm curious, would you finance a laptop this way?
You know, I really desperately want this product so long as it's 1998. The thing is, like, there was a sweet period in personal computer history where Moore's law was moving fast enough, and non-Moore's law things that are similar, like disk space and so forth, was moving at such an incredible clip that a laptop that was just a little old felt ancient, and so did a desktop. Now, obviously, the Surface is somewhere between the tablet and the laptop type of thing. I used to update my tablets annually in the early days of the iPad, and that velocity has tapered actually a lot faster than the computer velocity did. And I'm definitely at the point where even with a phone, 2 years is starting to feel like a shorter and shorter cycle period. So, I mean, I think with every piece of technology, it depends on where you are in the development cycle about whether basically buying a plan that makes sense if you're gonna upgrade with great frequency anyway. There are times when that makes more sense. There's times when that makes less sense. I kind of feel like with the tablet is a computer-like realm, the biannual upgrade is not such an immensely important thing. And the other thing is, like, the retail access is pretty cool, but that only matters if you've got a Microsoft store near you, and there are more and more of them, but they're far, far fewer than there are of Apple stores. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just not that frenetic about upgrading.
I think it's definitely not the time that it was a couple of decades ago, as you mentioned. At that point, everyone would have jumped on it. I think for a lot of people, it would be a case of, well, I could keep the computer I have, but really I would love to have the newest version. And for those people, it might make sense, but it's a relatively limited number of people. There's also people who don't want to pay up front. And for those people, it might be very interesting as well. So, yeah,
no, I really like your analysis of I wanted this in 1998, because I was definitely on an 18-month cycle back then too, and for laptops particularly. I mean, it's a little different because I do buy things just to have them to test on now for this job, but for my personal laptops, it's 2 years plus for sure.
And I like those periods. I like those periods when you desperately want something after 18 months because you feel that upgrade so viscerally.
Yeah.
And, these days, I mean, I'm a Mac guy, but, and I love my MacBook Pro. But I'm on I used to be on a biannual cycle with that even as recently as 7-8 years ago. And now it's like 3 or 4. And even then, I wish I noticed more change when I actually do it. I guess if I were an Apple Watch guy, maybe I'd be feeling like that really cool every year new stuff. But most stuff seems pretty stable right now.
Yeah, I think even for the Surface, in the beginning, the first model or first to second and second to third, it was kind of that feeling. But even for the Surface now, it's kind of, well, the new one is better for sure. But do you really feel the difference? Do you really need it? maybe not.
If I
It's
was
debatable.
18 months, which I actually am close to that for my Surface Book, in fact, I may be right at 18 months for Surface Book, and they said, oh, well, now you could get the one that has the Tobii, eye tracking software with all these cool features and accessibility options. That would be fun, but that's not the way it goes usually.
Yeah. All right. TechCrunch reports Karsten Knobloch spotted Google's new ad block feature in the latest pre-release Canary version of Google Chrome for Android. An option called Block Ads from sites that tend to show intrusive ads appears in the ad subsection of the site setting menu. Google is expected to launch the feature for all users of Chrome sometime in 2018. I have a question for you guys. So now we're seeing Google, whose entire business model relies on ads. So arguably they would have an incentive maybe they don't have the most incentive to implement ad blocking features doing it. Possibly, arguably, because of the pressure of so many people installing ad blockers, which are, again, arguably not super ethical. I mean, there's a debate there. How I'm not talking about the legal aspect, but morally, ethically, it's questionable. That is an example of that somewhat questionable behavior actually pushing a company or an institution to doing something that they are now going to present as the right thing to do. Do you guys think it justifies the use of ad blocks for years that was so controversial?
Did the end justify the means?
Kind of, because now it's going to be legitimate. This is effectively an ad block with rules, with a certain amount of control, but it is definitely an ad block. So everyone who was saying ad blocks are evil are now, kind of, this is not an evil one. Well, or maybe it is, but
Well, it's one that a lot of different people are signing off. Google didn't just make this up. They did it with the ad industry
of course.
in consortium,
but all of this was
independent
pushed,
standard and all of that. Yeah, so
all of this was pushed by the quote unquote questionable behavior.
Right. Rob, I'm curious what you think.
Well, it just is another demonstration of Google's unbelievable power in society. It's like entire businesses rise and fall based on changes in the Google rank, first of all. Now, you could certainly argue, and I have, that creating a good search experience is Google's raison d'etre. And, who but they should be people who decide what happens with PageRank. But now we're getting into a slightly different field. We're getting into a field of advertising in which they are a ginormous player. And I think it's safe to say and safe to presume that the types of ads that Google distributes, not merely on their own site, but on tens of millions of sites throughout the internet, those ads are not going to be blocked because they aren't evil. Like, I'm not making a riff on Google's ancient motto, but, Google ads are pretty inobtrusive and, that's important to them. But suddenly they're going to be the arbiter for a very, very large percentage of people who use the internet, because a very high percentage of us do use Chrome. So we're looking at the world through Google's window. And Google is now going to be in a position to say, well, that's a bad kind of ad and that's a good kind of ad. And today, 100% of ads, let's say, get through the Chrome window. Tomorrow it'll be less than, but we do know Google has Google ads to get through. And even if they're doing it for all the right reasons and are being very, very careful about Chinese walls and internal controls, this is going to look less than neutral, I think, to people and companies whose style of advertising becomes forbidden by one of their competitors. I think there's a moral hazard here. And I don't envy the people in Google's compliance and other sort of kind of trust-oriented departments who are going to have to keep an eye on this. It's tricky.
Well, and that is the natural way for your head to go. And Google, as I said, took very careful steps to say, we are not just coming up with these ad blocking standards on our own. They got a lot of other companies on board. They made an independent consortium to look into it. And so you're right. They have to be very careful about that. To get to Patrick's question directly, though, no, I don't think the end justifies the means, but I don't think that's what happened either. I've always felt that ad blocker, just using an ad blocker, is not for me. I don't think that's right because I don't want to block the ads and undermine the support of the sites that I visit. However, script blockers are something that is important for your security, and you may choose to use that. cookie tracker blockers that allow you to choose when you want to be tracked and when you don't, I think are an important exercise of your right. And Privacy Badger from the EFF is a great example of that.
Yep.
Both of those also block ads. And in those cases, I feel like, well, if these ads are abusing my security or my privacy, then they don't deserve to be loaded. And I think that's what drove this behavior. It wasn't people saying, I don't want to see ads. It was people saying, I don't want to see abusive ads. Now, a lot of people didn't go through the process that I did and just said, these pop-up ads are all over the place. I don't want to do it anymore. And a lot of people said, look, I want to protect my privacy. I'm just going to use AdBlock Plus. But it was treading over the line that caused this. And so in that sense, I do think that the behavior that it caused is a net positive in that it caused companies to agree, hey, we need to pull back on that.
And it also reduced the incentives, I think, to use AdBlock Plus, because most of the people I know who have installed it did it not because they wanted, they wanted a free ride or because they hated advertising or they felt entitled. It was because certain sites do have those really glaring, blaring, awful ads that interfere with your engagement with the content, and it just sort of slow down your browser and so forth. And so if Google can kill those things dead, I actually think that is a major motivation for why people use broader spectrum ad blockers. It may actually end up being a really good thing.
So basically, Tom took the positive view on the way things were worked out. And Rob, you're kind of saying that it's a net positive, even if the process might have been questionable. We could talk about this all day.
It could be. It was just what Tom was saying. I think the behavior for a lot of people adopting a real broad spectrum ad blocker is to get rid of the really offensive stuff. And if at a browser level, and it shouldn't just be Google. I mean, I'd feel better if it was a consortium that included Firefox and Apple, frankly. But if at the browser level, the really odious behavior gets stopped, then people will have far less incentives to pick up things that really interfere with the ad-supported economy writ large.
Yeah, I still think, before we move on in 1 second, I still think none of this would have happened if the outcry hadn't been that big, and it wouldn't have been as big if the common folk who don't know or care about privacy and scripts hadn't engaged in ad blocking, and they only care about the ad blocks. But
yeah, and the only reason that outcry got so big was because the ads were going over the line.
Sure.
Bloomberg sources say Facebook is working on a 13 to 15-inch touchscreen video chat device for the home to be announced as early as next spring's F8 developer conference. The same sources say Facebook's also working on just a smart speaker. So it sounds to me like they're working on an Amazon Echo competitor and an Amazon Echo Show competitor. The products are expected to come from Facebook's Building 8. That's their experimental lab. Of course, Facebook's not commenting on any of this, but supposedly lots of AI built in there, just like with Amazon Voice Services in the Echoes. That's not surprising. I guess what's surprising is to think of Facebook putting out machines, putting out devices.
Hardware, right. Yeah. That's where I was going to go. The biggest, the most interesting thing of this whole piece of news is Facebook is becoming a manufacturer now. They're putting out hardware, and that could become a really interesting part of the industry in the future.
Facebook, not Oculus, right? Facebook has been putting out hardware through Oculus, but this would be directly out of Facebook, which is a different thing.
I remember how odd it felt when Amazon shipped the first Kindle. Yeah. To think of Amazon as a hardware company. Didn't Facebook have a false start with that phone a while back?
They had an operating system, or it wasn't even an operating system. It was a launcher screen for Android.
That was it.
Phones.
Okay, that was it. I thought there was a Facebook phone that just.
Oh, there were lots of rumors about a Facebook phone, but none of them actually materialized.
Got it.
All right. UK Home Secretary Amber Rudd published an opinion piece in the Daily Telegraph arguing that real people, quote, often prefer ease of use and a multitude of features to perfect unbreakable security, end quote. Rudd says she does not advocate breaking encryption or creating backdoors, but wants communications stored on a central server, which can be obtained by court order, presumably encrypted. Ms. Rudd is meeting with representatives from Google, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft, and others at a counter-terrorism forum in San Francisco, where she is discussing how to stop extremists from uploading content to the internet.
Secretary Rudd is not wrong. People often prefer convenience over security. That's the problem that we need to solve.
Well, okay, I think what she's saying is there are a couple of things. First, what she's saying there is kind of nonsensical because she's talking about two entirely different things. She's saying they prefer ease of use over unbreakable security. I think what we've seen with all of the encrypted messaging services is that you can have both. It's apples and oranges.
WhatsApp certainly you can, but something like Allo you can't, according to Google.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the point is many of the messaging services now have very strong encryption, and they're not more difficult to use.
But the ones that don't, like Allo or Facebook Messenger, will say we don't provide end-to-end encryption, just point-to-point, because with end-to-end we wouldn't be able to do this or that little extra feature.
Sure. And the other thing which I'm very concerned about is I'm hearing more and more government officials saying, we don't want to break encryption. All we want is to be able to have access to your communication.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
It makes us laugh nervously because we know that what they're saying, we don't want things to be glittery. We just want to have glitter everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it really concerns me because it's the type of messaging that people who don't understand that technology can say, yeah, listen to what they're saying. They don't want to break encryption. They don't want to have backdoors. They just want to have access to the thing. That's reasonable. And it's very unnerving because I'm hearing this more and more. It makes me very
because
nervous.
WhatsApp with end-to-end encryption that you're the only holder of the key can't do what Secretary Rudd is asking for here. They just can't.
Exactly.
It's impossible. That's the way the system is. So they're trying to play this little end around game of like, we didn't ask for a backdoor. We just asked to be able to read all the messages. It's like, well, but if you leave, the only option is to leave unencrypted messages, then you've weakened security. You can't pretend that you haven't.
Yep.
Rob, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this before we move on.
Yeah, it's I agree with Patrick that it seems like kind of he's saying, well, some people prefer to listen to great music to having fabulous fuel economy in their car. It's like, wait a second. Yes, that's true. But is there really are these related? And I guess maybe what they're getting at is, and by the way, Amber Rudd is a great name. It's just one vowel away from Amber Red. And I wonder if her parents were thinking of a pun when they named her. This is, of course, in the days before the Amber Alert. But for a home secretary, isn't that kind of like basically Homeland Security? Or is Home Secretary more like Secretary of State?
It's a little bit like the Secretary of Interior.
Interior, okay, because the Amber, it has that sort of like color alert system type of thing. So it seems like a very good name for somebody in the security industry to have. But yeah, I assume that what they're getting at is if we can break it and we alone can break it, you don't have to worry about hackers, right? For most of us, we don't have to really worry about the government listening in on our messages because either we're boring or we're not terrorists or we're both. And the government only has so many ears. And most people, when they hear about security being undermined, are going to be more concerned about, does that mean my credit card is going to get stolen? Because that is a mundane concern. That's something that we all stress about. And so maybe the effort here is to say, well, we're not going to break security. You have nothing to worry about unless you're a terrorist. But it really does seem like a complete non sequitur that she's presenting here to people.
Yeah. And I should say Home Secretary does cover Department of Interior type stuff. It also covers internal security stuff. So there's a little bit of Homeland Security there. Yeah. It's just a different setup. What Secretary Rudd seems to be saying, whether she realizes it or not, is we don't want to break encryption. We just want to have it not applied in certain places. That way we don't have to break it. It's just right there on that central server. So
yes,
keep that in mind.
You can't break something if you never switch it on in the first place, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sony reported its best ever Q1 profit Tuesday on strong image sensor sales. They did lower their estimate for annual image sensor sales as Chinese clients shift to inexpensive alternatives for lower priced handsets. Gaming division profits fell 59.8% year over year with a few major titles being released, but Sony expects that to bounce back once new titles start to come out. Sony also announced it has acquired a majority stake in Funimation, the distributors of shows like Dragon Ball Z and One Piece. Sony expects its best annual operating profit since March 1998 by the time this fiscal year ends in March 2018. But yeah, really interesting there, Patrick, that Sony acquiring Funimation.
Yeah, I mean, they a few years ago, maybe 10, 20 years, they had a myriad of profit centers and they were a huge conglomerate. Now, really what they're relying on is gaming and image sensors. And gaming, the profits fell because basically they didn't have, my analysis is that they didn't have Uncharted 4, which was released last year around the same period. So that can be explained partly that way. But then going to invest in other types of businesses seems to me like they're trying to bounce back and diversify because they know that they might not be able to rely on, and they don't want to rely on just one or two types of businesses. However strong the image sensors sales are, they're probably not going to be able to be the big honcho forever in that market.
And Sony Pictures is starting to bounce back. They still have some reorganization to go, but Spider-Man Homecoming was great for them, so that was a good move. And real quickly, before we wrap this up, Apple announcing its earnings right now as we're recording the show, saying they sold 41 million iPhones last quarter, third straight quarter of accelerating revenue growth, expects 49 to 52 billion in Q4. Year-over-year change in revenue of up 7%, and bad news in China. Well, not that bad, but it was a shrinking market again. Revenue in Greater China declined 10% year-over-year to 8 billion. So iPhone sales doing well. Revenue overall for Apple doing well, but China still a problem that they need to work on and fix. And that's a look. Yes?
The market is happy. It is up 5% in after-hour trading. So
well, it won't be by the time most people listen to this, but yeah, immediately, the after-hours market did have a positive reaction to that. And that is a look at our top stories. If you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com or Daily Tech Headlines on Anchor or Daily Tech Headlines in your Amazon Echo. So one of the key points early in the story of Rob's book After On is augmented reality, an augmented reality device. And it just so happens that at Nerdtacular at the end of July, Patrick Beja and I both got a chance to try the HoloLens. Rob has tried not only the HoloLens, but the Meta 2 augmented reality headset. So I figured this is a good opportunity for us to share our impressions of how we feel about augmented reality in the state in which we have tried it. And granted, it's progressing still, but these are the two companies that actually have devices that you can get. Granted, Microsoft HoloLens is just a developer's kit, but the Meta is out. The Meta 2 is on its way. So, Patrick, let's start with you. Besides people pointing and laughing because they can't see the same things you're seeing when you have the headset on, how'd you feel?
I think the biggest surprise for me trying the HoloLens on is that it wasn't as janky as I thought it was going to be. The most important thing was the image. First of all, the lens itself, the plastic is completely clear. There's not even a slight gray film over your vision. But more importantly, the overlaid images are completely opaque. Like you actually cannot see what's behind them. I think we have this imagery fed by pop culture and movies where these holographic displays are sort of translucid. So I sort of came in with the expectation that it couldn't really create an object that felt solid because I could somehow see through it a little bit. But that wasn't the case. The images that were superimposed were completely opaque and felt like they had their place in the world. Another thing was that it was pretty good on object stability. They weren't, jiggling when you were moving. They were pretty set in the real space that you were looking at. So overall, I think the technology was more convincing than I had expected it to be. I think we're closer to a usable piece of technology than I had anticipated. The controls are still a little bit janky. I think holding up your arms is not great.
Crushing your head to do everything. Yeah,
exactly. There is apparently a clicker that you don't have to hold up your fingers and pinch to select things. And if you have a clicker, it's much more comfortable to use. On the Meta side, watching the videos, I think graphically it's very distracting. It's pixelated. It's very jiggly. It's not stable. I don't know if Rob will tell us that the actual experience is not as bad. But what I'm seeing from everything, the AR kit from Apple is surprisingly stable. Once you have an object at a spot in the real space, it sticks there very, very reliably. And overall, I would say I'm still not sure what uses that technology is going to have in everyday use. I think it has significant uses for professional at first, but I am way more not convinced, but I can be persuaded that this is going to be. Scratch that. I think it's going to be a significant technology for the future, and maybe a computing platform that is going to take a large space if we manage to find a form factor that works. Those ginormous headsets are not going to make it work for everyday use. But
I was surprised at how I forgot about the big janky headset on my head while I was using it. I don't disagree with you, but it was a little more comfortable than I expected, although I don't know if I'd call it exactly comfortable. And I was surprised, like you, about how solid things looked and how seamless they fit into the world around me, such that the limited field of view didn't bother me nearly as much as I thought it would, because I'm mostly looking at the center of my field of vision anyway. Rob, how have you felt about the ones that you've tried?
Well, you guys have spent more time with the HoloLens than I have, although I have tried both it and the Meta. And I'll agree with Patrick. The thing that I found most impressive about the HoloLens was the way things do get planted in space. They're very, very good at essentially connecting something to the ground, to the table, to whatever it is. And I think that word connect, just to crack a little pun, has something to do with it. I think they learned a great deal from all the work that they've done with the Kinect system about matching virtual objects to people in physical space and making them connect in a meaningful way. What I found powerful about the Meta 2 is it in enveloping field of view. It's closer to 90 degrees. And so when I had the HoloLens on, I kind of felt like there was like a mid-sized HD TV perched in front of me. And however good it is, and it is good, that doesn't make you lose yourself and feel like you are in an environment that is entirely fluent in your presence and in your actions. I also liked with the Meta 2 intuitive actions. And so one of the things I've spoken to Meta CEO Marone Gribbets about this very subject, and they've got something they call air grab. It's imperfect, but it's going to get better. And as it gets better, it's just a much more natural way to access objects and shuffle them around in the augmented space. It's literally what it sounds like. It's air grab. You grab the air and you get the thing and you put it to where you need it to be. And they don't have that taxonomy of gestures and so forth. So for me, I personally found the Meta 2 to be much more enveloping. And even though the headset, I think, is a little bit bigger. And here's the key thing, and this is really interesting. The Meta 2 is also tethered. And that is a really deliberate bet that the company has made on what's somewhat of a contrarian perspective, which is that they think almost all AR for the near future, and maybe even to the intermediate future, is going to be productivity oriented. And if that's your perspective, and you think people are going to be, at their desktops doing collaborative 3D and so forth, you're less worried about a cable plugged into the back of somebody's head, because they're not going to be doing live action role play in the park, right? And by deciding, okay, fine, we're going to be tethered, that gives them a few interesting things. It gives them access to much more powerful processors, because the processors are no longer on the headset. And so I think that's why they have the much wider field of view. You don't have to worry about heat dissipation. You can do things without worrying about weight quite as much. So I think in terms of just the sheer horsepower and presence, visual presence that the Meta 2 has, it is more powerful because they have made that rather expensive decision of tethering. Now, long term, we're all talking about size and tethering, presence, absence of tethering. I just have to look at Michael Douglas in the movie Wall Street talking on that shoebox-sized phone to have confidence that over a period of time, size issues will simply go away. They won't go away fast enough, but and the AR headsets are going to be those things that we're all going to wish we had the free upgrade after 2 years on. because they are going to go through that steep curve. But if you look at the sort of longer intermediate time frame, let's just assume that the form factor will simply be fixed by Moore's law, great design, learning curves in the manufacturing side, and so forth. But they are both intriguing. They both have their relative strengths and weaknesses. And it's really cool to see AR growing up. I mean, that, like Patrick said, we don't think of it as being these hard holograms. I still think of it partially as just being all 2D because of the old Google Glass launch video where everything was just this little notification. And everything in AR right now is 3D. It's all about holograms. And that's a really big step forward right there.
Well, the pre-orders are out today for the Acer Windows Mixed Reality Headset Developer Edition. That's $299, and the HP Windows Mixed Reality Headset Edition. That's $329. They may be sold out by the time you hear this, but there are more of them out there. So go check it out if you're interested. There's more and more places where you can demonstrate the HoloLens. A lot of the Microsoft stores, if you do have one nearby, you can do that. Thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com and facebook.com/dailytechnewsshow. Real quickly before we're out of here, we have a great email from our friendly neighborhood Bill, who's up on the Bitcoin stuff and wanted to clarify some of the things we mentioned yesterday. This morning, about 2.5 hours ago, the first block of Bitcoin Cash, which is the fork of Bitcoin, was recorded, was processed. So the fork has happened as of today. Whether Bitcoin Cash will become valuable, whether it will succeed, that's a whole separate issue. And if you want to know a little bit more about that fork, listen to yesterday's show. Or we even talk about it a little on the pre-show. If you're a Patreon, you can get that discussion on the patron version of the feed. In fact, you probably already did if you're a patron. But Bill writes, yesterday you mentioned the Bitcoin Cash fork, and this is part of the debate that's been going on for about 3 years. Bitcoin core developers aren't the core Bitcoin developers. They're a group of developers in charge of one implementation of Bitcoin. Even if you only consider the blockchain they operate on, there are dozens of implementations of that coin. To be fair, these implementations are largely compatible till now. The centralization fears over larger Bitcoin blocks, in Bill's opinion, is unfounded. Larger block experiments have worked on Raspberry Pis. The chief concern is around hard drive space, but as you know, hard drives get bigger and cheaper all the time. A $200 drive will hold the Bitcoin Cash blockchain for several years to come. Considering it costs several $1,000s to buy a miner, that has a chance of being profitable. Bill, again, sees this as a non-issue. So you can tell Bill comes down a little bit on the Bitcoin Cash side of this. Segregated witness, SegWit, is a solution to scaling Bitcoin, which in part aims to take transactions off the blockchain. In this model, Bitcoin becomes a settlement layer between money service businesses as opposed to a peer-to-peer digital cash for the internet. SegWit does not increase the block size limit, but does fill the blocks in a more efficient way. In networking terms, it increases the effective throughput without increasing the bandwidth. Now, SegWit is what the Bitcoin core developers are moving to, and SegWit 2x is a version of that does increase the block size. Finally, once the Bitcoin Cash blockchain speeds up, separating your wallets involves backing up your old wallet, installing a Bitcoin Cash compatible wallet, importing your private keys, and creating a transaction as you would have done previously. It's not technically illiterate grandpa proof, but listeners of this show can probably get it done in 15 minutes with a walkthrough. It's a confusing issue and hard to cover in a few minutes, but thanks for raising the awareness. And he's got some source links to bitcoin.org, to the Raspberry Pi, doing big blocks, SegWit, and more. You can check that out. And of course, Bill, if I misrepresented you as being on the Bitcoin Cash side of things, I apologize. But it did seem like you were sort of saying, hey, the big blocks probably aren't that big of a deal. But we really do appreciate that explanation.
I'm really glad that there are some people in the audience who are smart enough to figure this out, because I certainly couldn't have.
No. All right, let's take a quick break and check in with Mike Range, who does the weekly Tech Views, a more humorous look at all of this stuff if your brain is hurting after thinking about Bitcoin.
Well, it's time for the monthly Tech Views to recap July's technology news. Recap being defined here, of course, as frivolously make fun of. For example, a Nightscope K5 security robot was found floating in a Washington, D.C. office plaza fountain. This very expensive robot was equipped with facial recognition capability, HD video capture, infrared and ultrasonic sensors, and tragically, an irresistible desire for loose change. For more of the TechView's dubious analysis, go to dailytechnewsshow.com. And if you get a few laughs, maybe check out the shiny new TechViews Patreon at, get this, patreon.com/TechViews. Remember, the TechViews was fake news before fake news was cool.
Thank you, Mike, for that. And do go check out his Patreon. Rob, I think your book might have turned out quite differently if this was the dominant sort of intelligence in your robots.
You know, I think that the AI is listening because it censored you. One of your words that you just said, it's the first word of this entire cast, even though I don't have great bandwidth in the apartment I'm in right now, that didn't come through. So I think that the super AI is censoring you. Could you repeat your question?
My question is, After On is out and would have been an entirely different book if the robots had all wanted to loose change instead of what they do.
It is true.
In the book.
It is true.
But folks, if you haven't checked it out, go to after-on.com. You can find all about the book. You can get excerpts there, a little bit about the audiobook. There's even a podcast that Rob and I have been working on. And in fact, Marone Gribbets that we were talking about earlier is the first episode in that podcast that's up there.
Yes.
It's all at after-on.com. Rob, anything else to tell folks about?
You know, I'm just going to do a little bit of foreshadowing here because you mentioned it. In 2 days, Tom and I have a podcast that is going to launch, that is going to go deep into the science and technology of this book. But Tom will tell you about that in 2 days. You know, it's exciting. It's exciting as hell. But we've got a couple other things, and then it's going to be out in the world. Yeah, and today what I'm babbling about is really the launch of my book. I'm really excited and proud of it. Took me about 7,500 hours, as I think I might have mentioned at the top of the episode, to write and edit this thing. It's chunky. It goes deep, deep, deep into lots of domains of science and technology. And it's also really, I think, pretty fluent in the way that entrepreneurship works. I was a high-tech entrepreneur for several years. I was even a VC for a couple of years. And a lot is written and depicted about Silicon Valley entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial finance, and so forth. Much of that is written by folks who haven't lived it. And I will definitely accept the wonderful show on HBO, which I think gets Silicon Valley in a really, really note-perfect way. But the book is very much as well about what it's like inside a startup, the unique pressures that we face, the compromises that people make. And there's a great deal of playfulness about a certain diabolical artificial superintelligence who may just hold the keys to the world's saving or destruction in her hands. So that's it. And thank you.
Yeah, go check it out. Again, the book is called After On, after-on.com. Available now. Audiobook has a lot of cool people on it, and it also has me on it as the voice of the New York Times.
It does. Yes, the audiobook features Tom and Leo Laporte and Felicia Day and Patrick Rothfuss and John Hodgman and other fabulous narrators.
Go check all of that out. And of course, very happy to have Patrick Beja back with us again. Patrick, I know you took a break from everything, but it's all back in action. There's a new Phileas Club. There's a new Le Rendezvous Tech. It's all happening at FrenchSpin.com.
Yep, absolutely. It's really good to be back. I mean, as we joked about before the show started, I don't know if I was kind of not really on vacation because I was checking out tech news and gaming news anyway, or if I'm always on vacation, which is probably the nicer version because I do that all the time. But yeah, just to keep up with me, FrenchSpin.com for my shows, and Not Patrick on Twitter or Facebook. That's where you get my stuff.
Today is, of course, Patreon Day, the day when all the pledges are collected at patreon.com/DTNS. So huge thanks to each and every one of you who makes this show possible, whether you give us $1 or $50. Give yourself a pat on the back for making this show happen. We thank you. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. And our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Back tomorrow with Scott Johnson and filmmaker John Schieffer. Talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Good show.
All right.
Thanks, you guys. What should we call this?
I don't
Got
know
any
why
idea?
people are convinced that Scott was supposed to be on today.
What?
Why?
I don't know. Scott has been absorbed by the blockchain is the first. Scott Johnson has been absorbed by the blockchain is the first title. I don't know why.
I
Anyway,
think it's because
no, I was going to say tons. I was checking out the chat room as we were discussing things, and lots of very good AR puns in the
good.
titles. Are you not entertained? Are you ready to rumble?
Hey, are we having fun yet?
Exactly. All of those.
well, at the top is the Daydream receiver on a phone calling screen. And then Scott Johnson's been absorbed by the blockchain. Don't count your bits before they're hashed. Google's unlimited cosmic power itty bitty blocking app. Examining ads with a fine tooth Chrome. The Great British Backdoor Show. You don't want to that are everywhere. HoloLens not cloudy with a chance of jiggle. Google Ads blocking to Chrome, face to Facebook. Hollow's the new YOLO. Are we ready for this? Did that? Illiterate grandpa held at Beja gets SNEST. Google blocks.
Like held at bay.
sense.
I get it. Okay.
UK says yuck to crypto muck. Sony's sensors shine. Sony acquires Funimation. Acquires Funimation. Jiggly VR. The fork has happened.
I actually like Are you not entertained?
Yeah, I voted for that.
Are
one
you
too.
not entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Are you not?
I like it.
Boom.
You could do a Devo reference. Are we not men? It's getting ancient.
I like that too, actually.
That's getting ancient.
I know.
It's 30.
I'll make some Church of the SubGenius references in the description too.
Oh, good for you. There are not enough Church of the SubGenius references out there in general.
I know.
Oh, there was a period in the
Because of
90s.
the pinks.
Oh yeah, no, that time needs to return.
Yeah.
That time is currently past, but
X Day happened. That's why.
oh, did it?
Yeah,
Already?
I think it was.
Was it in the
1999.
was it in the calendar? Was there a date?
X Day? X Day was
Yeah.
99, I think.
Oh, got it. Okay, well there.
Began Thursday, June 29th, ended July 5th. For 2017. Next day.
What's X Day?
It's the Church of the SubGenius Day when the aliens would return.
Oh,
You know.
You know, a lot
Right,
of
right.
times
Of
the
course.
Devout double down when an apocalyptic date is missed. That is a phenomenon in these sort of fringe religions. That oftentimes, people just they double down. It's like I'm all the more faithful now.
I remember there was a response about that on that no, this wasn't in fact X Day. It was going to be this day instead.
1998 was the
98.
Yeah. So when the first X Day arrived and no alien fleet appeared in the sky, members of the church began sending a large number of conspiracy theories. The
There
manual
we go.
page of the
Perfect.
D-Day proclaims that the church declared that it had got the year upside down, and that the actual day will take place in 8661.
That is classic SubGenius stuff.
Yes, totally.
But that's how a lot of those apocryphal dates work out, right? Oh no, we used the wrong calendar. We missed, we used a modern day
Calculated
Gregorian
it
calendar.
Yeah.
You can't use human arithmetic to calculate the date.
Your human mind would not understand.
The SubGenius calendar works on a logarithm.
So, Patrick, you're not familiar with the Church of the SubGenius, it sounds like.
no, I just Wikipedia'd as Roger did, and have now been informed of its nature.
Yes, it was entirely playful in nature.
Yeah,
Right.
It was never done in a
and-
serious manner.
No, and unbelievably
Or
funny.
was
Like the books are just brilliant.
Yeah.
I
They're
just
I
like
really
the
like
little-
the explanation of why it didn't happen in 1998.
Oh yeah, that's classic them.
Getting the numbers. Oh, Of course.
I had the pleasure of meeting Reverend Ivan Stang at one point.
Really?
When I lived in Austin. Yeah.
Was that at a bookstore?
It was. It was at the Fringeware bookstore.
Yeah. He looks like one of those guys that just inhabits a bookstore.
Well, Fringeware was a beautiful place. It was a bookstore.
Was
And
it like a paradise, an Eden, perhaps?
It was, and they would have cultural events at it like bookstores do, but it was all fringe computer oriented stuff.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where I would go buy 2600 magazine and Boing Boing when it was actually a zine.
I used to buy that.
Yeah.
Then I read more about what's his name, and what's Emmanuel, the guy who ran it. I was like,
Guy that ran what? Oh, 2600.
2600. Did we settle on the title?
Yes.
Are we having fun yet? Or
Are we not entertained?
Are you not entertained?
Oh, yeah. Right? I think it's, yeah. Are you not entertained?
I think that on the Sony thing, I thought they bought Funimation so they could channel that into PlayStation Plus as exclusives.
Well, there might be interesting stuff happening with PlayStation Plus, but I don't think they would limit it to PlayStation Plus.
Well, I don't think they would limit it, but they would give them like initial release privilege and then just give everyone else. Like, you don't think so?
No, that would be. I mean, there's a lot of people who have PlayStation Plus, but cutting yourself off from every other source of revenue for, I don't know. I don't see it happening.
I mean, they're just deals that they do in the same way that Disney does deals with Netflix. It doesn't have their entire catalog on it and it rotates.
Yeah, but they don't give the exclusive. I mean, maybe for older catalog stuff, but
yeah. But then Sony owning Funimation would allow them to do that, and since they kind of are the premier distributor in North America, it gives them. Depending on how they do those deals, I mean, Harmony Gold still owns the right to all the Macross stuff in the U.S., which is why you haven't. Really
maybe if they include it with the PlayStation View, and trying to prop up their service like that, but.
I mean, it's definitely more than just one point of where it intersects with what they want to do. I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you just think it's just kind of diverse. All right.
Yeah, no, I think I think that they could very well be doing it for other purposes, but I don't think PlayStation Plus would be a sufficient outlet for the most animes like Dragon Ball Z and One Piece for them to be exclusive to PlayStation Plus. It's not.
Well, it wouldn't be
leaving money on the table
in its entirety. It'd just be exclusive for like a 6-month, 8-month period. I mean, isn't PlayStation kind of cultivated a lot of developers for JRPGs? I mean, it kind of has segue with the audience.
What about putting it into PlayStation View?
That's what I said.
Did you? Oh, I was busy.
Yeah,
uploading.
I know you don't.
You're a genius, Patrick. That's a smart idea.
However, this genius is gonna go. Is gonna go away.
Oh, too soon. Too soon.
I'll be back next week, though.
All right. Yes. Good. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
See y'all soon.
Bye, Roger. Bye, chat room.
Bye-bye.
And Rob, you've got book signings to get prepped for, huh? Bye, Rob. Okay, he's already left.
All right, sorry. I was waving at everyone. I guess I thought
I didn't have the video up in front of me, so I couldn't see. Hey, thanks everybody for hanging around. It was good to talk to you, and we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.